Good morning, Australia, and welcome to What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph, in which we explore why Australia is becoming meaner and dumber through the pages of Australia's leading selling newspaper, the Sunday Telegraph. Strap in, we're going to see what's inside, we're going to apply the power of critical thinking, and at the end of it, who knows, we may have had a laugh along the way, as well as getting angry. Cool, what's on the front page? The top 100 restaurants we rank the best in New South Wales. Isn't food good? Isn't brunch the best we can aspire to? What is the best restaurant you're probably never going to go to? The most important piece of news that you can be presented with today. Do restaurants advertise? All right. Stellar Exclusive gives us the frozen cover girls. That's something to look forward to, isn't it? And the world's richest race, the Everest. Please, 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 can the Melbourne Cup not be so important? Sydney begs once again. Okay, when we get to actual news on the front page, it's just big words, give a damn. $1 billion plan to save bone dry bush. 2 dam projects headline rescue package. Shame about all the dams that have pulled all the water out of the rivers to run almond farms and soy and cotton farms for American agribusiness, which just exports it for profit overseas, and we don't see hardly any of it here, which is where all the water's gone. And a pity about the coal mines changing the climate so that there's less rain. But sure, let's flood a few more valleys. That'll fix it. And then page 6 or 7, toilet to tap, town to use sewage for drinking water. Like those third world hellholes, London and Paris. Let's see what's inside. Oh, Jennifer Aniston. Well, page 2 is just Woolworths advertising the Odd Bunch. We happily accept imperfectly sized or oddly shaped fruit and veggies for the Odd Bunch, making a virtue of all the good fruit having been sold to Japan. Top cop is to keep racing clean. A senior police detective with full investigative powers will be provided to Racing New South Wales in a joint venture to combat any corrupt activity. Or the cynical might say, to ensure corrupt activity is kept away from the eyes of the public and the law. One or the other. Hard to tell the difference, really. Jennifer Aniston is our page 3 girl, right? Something to do with the Everest, great. So there's a run-through of the ATSB report on aircraft incidents. A possum caused a stuck landing gear. No mention if the possum survived. Why would you? So normally on page 2 we get mixed picks, but because of Woolworths telling us that they're selling crap fruit, for the environment, not for profit, mind you. Mixed picks, the best of the newspaper, according to its own editor, is consigned to page 4. They haven't actually put a number 4 on it, so I'm guessing it got bumped late. Cool, so the best 100 restaurants, hooray, which is kind of pushing their Delicious magazine, so selling their own book. Bumper 72-page travel lift out. That's a pick. 72 pages of advertising feature. Pick. The Cell features a picture of Elton John saying it's a must-read column on who bought what, where and how for how much with real estate expert Jonathan Chancellor. Page 33. Elton John and real estate. What more could a Telegraph reader ever ask for? The Women of Bathurst. Hooray. Women can be bogans too, as if we ever doubted that. How to beat sugar for good, which is kind of funny with the travel and the Delicious and the real estate, but sure, cut out the sugar, that'll fix everything. Then they're talking up about our own Everest. There are women jockeys. Everest. Rugby league. Jack Whiten, who is a magnificent football player, apparently is on the open market after rejecting a contract offer from the Raiders, which is a shame for Raiders fans. Pauline Hanson is threatening to abstain from voting on non-critical legislation unless the Morrison government acts to save dairy farmers at breaking point. Well, she's got a polling, I guess. Right, the Telegraph's applauding the green lighting of another coal mine in the Hunter Valley. The decision will secure at least $104 million in royalties. $104 million's real money, and I'd be pretty happy to see 1,000th of it myself. Seems a little small in the scale of a state budget to, destroy the future, human life and the planet's civilization as we know it. It's funny, they're also keen on preserving the Australian way of life from nasty Greenings, wanting them to use reusable bags, but God forbid we get in the way of a coal mine that might end all of that. play a small part towards ending all of that. But a significant part, an appreciable part. The town that's going to be drinking its poo is Tenterfield, revealed, bone dry, drought report, 07. What's funny is there's lots of smiling kids bathing in the slightly mixed messages they're selling here, and there's a mayor with his arms crossed. I assume it's the mayor. He doesn't have a caption on him. I won't drink it, says local mum. She's probably drinking bottled water anyway. I'm just throwing that out there as a total guess and character assassination. $1 billion for first dam in 30 years. Where are they going to build it? Dungowan near Tamworth and Wyangala Dam in the state central west will be expanded. I'm not actually that opposed to well-planned, well-sited dams. It's the fact that all these private, terrible dams, they're called turkey nest dams, so they just use a bulldozer to scrape the water a bit higher, and they make really wide, flat dams that lose an unbelievable amount of water through evaporation. And the agribusiness on the Murray-Darling, we're not talking mum and pop operators here, we're just talking big offshore corporations, have been extracting vast amounts of the water out of the system for that, and then they come to us saying, oh, we've got to destroy a bit more of the environment to save it from all the other environmental destruction we've done, and I get a bit cranky at that. I also think you could possibly be investing more in a proper water grid across the state so you can move water around. I mean, I get moving water is expensive, but humans drinking potable water actually pay quite a premium for it. And I think in most of the numbers I've seen, it's doable. But the bigger problem is that we're selling the water that is there unbelievably cheaply to these huge business interests, and then wondering why there's no water. Moving on. Hangry inmates given hampers, long lockdowns, peace offerings. So the Parkley Correctional Centre is giving hampers to prisoners who've been locked in their cells longer than normal due to staff shortages. I don't mind prisoners being given coconut water and shortbread. I mind the prisons not being staffed appropriately. That I'm not very keen on. And also we're starting the American process of privatising the prisons here, so the privatised prisons then lobby the government to criminalise more behaviours so they can fill up their prisons and make more profit. Hooray, capitalism. Just want to say, when I have a go at capitalism, I'm talking about the accumulation of capital in the hands of a few. I'm all for market-based solutions where they work, and I will acknowledge that in many cases they can be efficient, but I would also say that if they are not regulated, you end up with capitalism, and just capital accumulating in the hands of a few is great if you're the few and terrible for everyone else, which is most of the people watching this. Battle scars, breast cancer. The brave patients, hospital staff are begging for life-saving equipment. So the only hospital in the state dedicated to women's health does not have a mammogram machine. Fixation with the Ibrahim family rolls on, with Fadi now suing a former madam for $4 million. Jamali Lahoud is being sued by Fadi Ibrahim. 45-year-old brother of King's Cross identity John Ibrahim has launched a new legal action claiming Jamali Lahoud, who ran Camperdown Bordellos Stilettos, defaulted on a $2.5 million loan, and he now wants her to pay almost $2 million in interest. Jane Fonda has been arrested at a climate protest. Interesting to see a Washington Byline story as early as page 13, but it has got a celebrity in it. Oscar winner Jane Fonda has been arrested outside the US Capitol, where she was protesting climate change and demanding action to protect the environment. I do wonder if Jane Fonda, for all the hatred, absolute hatred poured on her from the right, isn't going to be looked back on in years to come as some sort of ahead of her time hero, because she was actually right about the Vietnam War, guys. Sorry. Great, we've got a picture of an enormous shark killed by a bloodthirsty family. Look at that horrible little killer next to the fish he's murdered. What's wrong with us, the world, and a paper that celebrates such a magnificent, large, wild creature being murdered for sport? I mean, they've just about got their heads around people posing with elephants is bad news, but on we go. Oh, here's some racism. A Mexican wave of coke cartel soldiers. True Crime Australia. This is advertising their podcast. So we've got a picture of a forensic scientist with his arms crossed looking very serious. Photo by Gary Ramage. Exclusive by Charles Miranda. Mexican drug cartels have ordered their gang members down under to oversee drug trafficking operations in Australia for the first time as purity levels of cocaine reach records high. Well, some good news then. What's funny is like their headline is Colombia remains the main producer of cocaine in the world. Colombia and Mexico are a long way apart. They're very different countries. I wonder if language and skin colour is the similarity the Telegraph sees. Alright, best 100 restaurants. Here we go. The Alberto Lounge is number 1. Hooray for them. Right, the stupid Pride of Australia things have gone on. I mean, good, well done. I'm sure everyone who's been nominated is actually great. It's just why the newspaper needs to run its own set of awards for people it likes. And we already festoon prominent Australians with titles and publicity. I'm not knocking anyone in particular. I mean, hooray for Fiona Stanley. I sincerely hooray for Fiona Stanley. Just saying there's a lot of other people, and if you actually delve into the awards process, it's it's skewed towards a certain type of person, and that's fine. No problem with those types of people, just a problem with other types of people not getting recognised. So if Tony Abbott had handed out his first 2 knighthoods to social workers from the back blocks, then we'd probably have that institution for a long time, but Tony can't give anything to anyone who hasn't already got everything. There's an ad campaign to attract Indians to Australia for the Cricket World Cup, which seems like an easy sell. And for some reason, Ben Pike feels the need to compare it to the Where the Bloody Hell Are You campaign of so long ago. And admittedly, the Prime Minister was responsible for it. It was a miserable disaster. So I'm, in general, quite keen on remembering it poorly, but it just seems totally irrelevant. And the fact that it's being targeted to an Indian audience and is less racy on the bikini swimwear stuff is well done, bureaucrats, for doing their jobs well. It's golf clap from me. No applause from the Sunday Telegraph, of course, which just thinks women should be sexualised at every possible opportunity. So here we've hit the source early, page 29, political gossip with Annika Smethurst, Linda Silmarlis and Miranda Wood. They're calling them Panya, the hottest new couple in Canberra. Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton has puckered up to Labor's Tanya Plibersek for a hefty price. It was a kiss on the cheek to raise $5,000 at the Surrey Hills Sydney City Police and Community Gala Ball on Friday night. Ugh. Apparently Peter Dutton's a fan of taxidermy. I'm not sure if that's a joke or not. It's not clear, which is a poor joke in a political column if you can't be sure if it's correct or not, isn't it? Then we get to Jamie Clements in front of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, which I would have thought was slightly bigger news, and the New South Wales National Party is throwing its $100th birthday party in Sydney. The party of weatherboard and iron is apparently more at home at the SCG. This is interesting. So, for the grammar nerds, of which I think we've got a few in the audience, the lead sentence of this item is, the New South Wales National Party is throwing a 100th birthday bash. Future tense, yeah? In Sydney, correct. Which is where last night's knees up happened. Past tense. Did it happen last night? Is it happening tomorrow? Simple things you'd think a newspaper could convey. More about this stupid horse race, the Everest. Headline on page 31, lower paid to get city homes, talking about social housing. Just a whiff of envy in there, I reckon. Alright, the reason Elton John is headlining the property is that he's going to call Bellevue Hills home for 5 months while he does 34 concerts across Australia. Just goes to show how Australia is the home of wealthy rich people, doesn't it, that Elton John's doing a 34-day tour. My apologies. Wealthy old people. Wealthy rich people is, of course, redundant. Brutal reality of gang warfare. The Darwish Razak gang in war-torn Western Sydney. The Darwish Razak gang war tore Western Sydney apart 15 years ago in a wave of murder, kneecappings and drive-by shootings. Okay, 15 years ago, huh? News. There's a kid going to play Billy Elliot. He can jump in the air. Not good. The snitch is farewelling the Italian stallion. Any good crook worth their salt has heard of Angelo Memello. You'd be hard-pressed to find a cop in the state who doesn't like the veteran homicide detective. So it's no surprise to see the top brass-studded crowd, the recently retired Detective Chief Inspector. It was no surprise to see the top brass-studded crowd, the recently retired Detective Chief Inspector, pulled at a farewell function on Friday to mark the end of his stellar 33-year career. It's an awkward sentence, if you ask me. A detective chief inspector with an Italian name is the Italian Stallion. Unfortunately, they've put the article next to a photo of alleged Finks bikie gang member Samed Mikhail. So, women of Bathurst. Sport. Oh, look. On a full page of dog torture. Not too proud to take that money. Wonder if it's got anything to do with the so-called news coverage of said dog torture. The 100 best restaurants. So Alberto's Lounge number 1, Key number 2, of course that was up there. Cirrus number 3, Momofuku Siebo, St Peter and Paddington, Chippendale's Esther at 6. The prices, they just put in multiples of dollar signs, and all of the ones in this range have 3. First cheap restaurant is Best French. That tells you how the time's changing. That's Restaurant Hubert. Hold on then. I mean, I'm not going to read through the 100 because that'll be me giving as much prominence to this fatuous exercise in status politics. Body and Soul is decoding skincare labels. Oh my god. So Hustle, which is a truly appalling film. Lengthy review of it by me and my partner Sheridan in the Give Me the Remote podcast. So the podcast is called Give Me the Remote. You can check out my views on that. If you want longer views other than it's really terrible, just watch Dirty Rotten Scoundrels again for a much better movie. And if you want women at the centre of action, watch Broad City. Which is, any given episode of Broad City is 10 times funnier than The Hustle. Right, after wading through the sport, remember there used to be a time when the sport was just on the back page and at least you knew where it was, and if you wanted sport, you got it, and if you wanted news, you got it. So we're doing 2 pages on Death is the Only Winner as Chaos Rules Syria, which... It's not an attack on Syria, it's an attack on the Kurdish-held part of Syria. We sort of get to why do the Kurds feel betrayed right at the very end of a 2-page spread. Why did the US pull out? Donald Trump made a campaign promise to withdraw from endless, senseless wars in the Middle East. It's weird how why did the US pull out doesn't mention Trump's real estate holdings in Turkey. I don't know how that could have eluded them. Boris Johnson could give in to European demands and mid renewed hope a Brexit deal might finally be realised. It's sounding as if Boris is actually going to accept something like the deals that Theresa May was taken to the Parliament. Right, UK stabbing terror. This is 3 people were stabbed at a Manchester shopping centre, which sounds like we're just trying to scare people with the news rather than inform them of anything useful to them. And possibly the biggest news in the whole paper, US-China strike partial trade deal. The United States and China have agreed to the first phase of a trade deal covering agricultural purchases, currency, and some aspects of intellectual property protections, averting a threatened tariff hike. President Donald Trump said more needs to be negotiated. I just love the idea that the Chinese are going to buy $40 billion worth of US products that they don't want and don't need. This is in manufacturing, they do need agricultural and primary products. Just to make the US keep buying all the stuff that's manufactured in China, which people do actually want and need. And now Peter Credlin. Oh, this is glorious. So I'm just going to try and show you that. Volunteers and victimhood. Pure victimhood. It couldn't have played out... Let's start that again. It couldn't have been starker this week. Playing out on the news each night, we saw 2 Australias on display. The Australia of duty and service, and the Australia of anger and disruption. I'm referring to the community volunteers, the Fireys, who have been fighting the massive blazes devastating northern New South Wales and southern Queensland, plus the Salvos, the CWA, and all the other helpers who keep them in the field, and the contrast with the so-called Extinction Rebellion protesters causing huge disruption, all because the government won't instantly close down the coal industry to fight climate change. I am an Extinction Rebellion protester as of Friday. I am an evil Australian, according to Peter. I wouldn't, note that Peter seems immune to the irony that the fires raging out of season might be somewhat related to the CO2 being pumped into the air by her beloved coal industry. Week after week, column after column, Peter goes into bat selflessly for the fat billionaires of the coal industry, destroying the planet. What a hero she is. Oh, here we go. The protesters claim that climate change is causing the bushfires, causing the drought, and then we should have shut down mining and shut down agriculture. No, not shut down agriculture. Stop flying by aircraft. Driving cars and eating meat is, of course, complete rubbish. Australia has always been a land of drought and flooding rain. Bushfires have always been a fact of Australian life. Indeed, Indigenous people used fire from early times to manage the fuel load. Yet the predominance of Greens on local councils has meant that we've arguably made things worse by our modern reluctance on environmental grounds to allow more regular hazard reduction burns. Notwithstanding the sorry reality that many recent bushfires have in fact been deliberately lit. Yeah, but how far the fire goes and how fast it goes once it's lit has a bit to do with the climate. Anyway, Peter, I don't see you fighting a bushfire. And correct me if I'm wrong, if Peter Credlin is in fact volunteering with the bushfire fighters, then I really would love to apologise and doff me lid to her. But it's other people doing the duty to fix the mess you're making on behalf of the coal billionaires, Peter. And if I'm riding a bike down the road in my town and doing a die-in to try and draw attention to the fact we need to do something about it, sure, call me I am angry. Absolutely. And everyone should be. And Peter should be too, but she's too busy getting paid off by the coal industry. And I don't know if she's received cash, but she has written about her paid trips to India to meet with the Adani Corporation. And I'm willing to stand in a court of law and say that sounds like a payment to me. And then we get some immigrant bashing, although immigrant bashing attacking the Morrison government, so there you go. Morrison government wants you to believe it's cutting immigration, but buried amid commitments of a 30,000 a year cut in a permanent migrant intake is a change that all but guarantees record levels of immigration will continue. She's attacking what she calls the Treasury boffins who are big Australia zealots. Moving on, thumbs up to Joel Fitzgibbon for arguing the RP must abandon its emissions targets. Once again, Peter rides out in service of the coal industry while talking about how great the volunteer firers are who put out the fires she starts. Thumbs down to Donald Trump for abandoning the Kurds who helped the West defeat Islamic State. Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, but I'll give you a pass on that, Peter. You're not always wrong on everything, like a stopped clock. Peter Gleeson, relegated to the footer of Peter Credlin's page once again, tells us our streets are blocked by a wave of couch surfing bludgers. So, speaking as an Extinction Rebellion protester, I did my protest on Friday and then went to work where I was at work on time. In fact, I was at work a little early. But Peter reckons I'm a dole bludger. And he says the dole in this country is a rort. I'd like to see him try and live on it. In their small minds, they see themselves as the totemic heroes for a new generation of eco-warriors. They're a painful and annoying symbol for what's wrong with those brainwashed youth. As many have said this week, these are the exact same arguments used against the suffragettes. Or, I would hasten to add, the slavery abolitionists. So, sure. The bootlickers can call us names. Someone called Melinda Pavey, who I don't think can't recall seeing before, is telling us how resilient the bush folk are with their use of water. Well, they have to be because the big end of town out in the bush have taken it all. And you go right back to the original land grants to European settlers in this country. Control of the water has always been the path to riches out there. Like, you see these maps of when they take a grant, you just take out a thin strip along the water, deny access to anyone else, then you've got a hinterland you can graze your livestock in that belongs to no one legally, but is functionally only usable by the water baron. We bury our history in this country. It's quite amazing. It's all there. It's in books. You can look it up, but we just bury it and refuse to learn from it. And then the same things happen over and over again. And every time I say, oh, this is terrible. We should do something about this. And then we don't. We just keep reading the Sunday Telegraph. Lucy Kahn has a wake-up call to us all. She wants us to embrace digital positives. Me too. Piers Ackerman is setting up more leftist strawmen. He does love building them and knocking them down. There is an alarming degree of institutionalised stupidity globally, and Australia has shown it is not immune to this lunacy. Piers and I agree. Over the past week, there have been demonstrations in cities around the world by a group calling itself Extinction Rebellion. If anyone read their pathetic slogans, they would have been laughed off the streets rather than dragged off them by hard-working police officers. Pierce found one demonstrator who made a statement that might be dubious. It's all good for him. Good for him. I'm glad that out of thousands of people, one of them was wrong, as opposed to Piers, who's just wrong all the time. Piers is wrong thousands of times. One protester was wrong once. Claire Harvey is railing against the rebels with gold opal cards. This is the old people who are Extinction Rebellioning. Well, we've certainly rattled the Telegraph commentariat, so not a complete waste of a week. So Insider is telling us that the Everest is going to give you a taste of the high life. It's the richest race in the world, and even if you don't come out ahead on the track, you're bound to pick a winner when it comes to food and drink. And they literally promise that there will be the Malt Shovel Tap House, so just James Squire's crappy Tooheys brews. I mean, Squire's is okay, but it's not exactly the high life. It's strictly pedestrian middle class fare. And there'll be food trucks. Since when did food trucks become the height of opulence? It's food being made by people who lack access to finance to open a proper restaurant, and hooray, we call it innovation. And don't get me wrong, I like eating at food trucks, and I like little food trucks courts. They're pleasant places to visit, and it's an enjoyable experience generally. You know, I just wish all those hardworking men and women in those food trucks actually had access to capital to set proper businesses up. And I know that some do, but it's your classic lottery winners syndrome. A few get lucky, and if you have access to more finance, then they let on and do manage to set up properly. And I'm thrilled for them, but gee, there's a lot of broken dreams along the way for everyone else. So there's a new Maleficent movie coming out. Any excuse to put Angelina Jolie on the cover. We're doing the Sunday Book Club again, which they're pushing. Literally, the books they're pushing are Clive Cussler, Stephen King, Jeffrey Archer. Then 2 food books, Jamie Oliver and Donna Hay. And, Robert Jordan, who's been dead for 20 years. Duncan Lay says move over George R.R. Martin, another fantasy master is claiming the spotlight. A dead one. Anyway, Clive Cussler, Stephen King and Jeffrey Archer. 30 years, nothing's changed. There's no new books, no new insights. It's all just dudes. The same dudes, literally the same dudes. There is actually a lot of really interesting, really good new stuff happening in the world of books, but you won't find out about it in the pages of the Sunday Telegraph. It's just old, mean, white men. And I'm an old, mean, white man, and I know my kind. And then we've got a page of Elton John stuff for anyone who isn't aware of the story who reads the Sunday Telegraph. I think they might be familiar with it. Sean Bean's in a movie called World on Fire. Is it a movie? It's an epic. There's something on Foxtel called World on Fire. It's got Sean Bean in it. If you haven't had enough of World War II, and why would you? It's the only story worth telling, apparently. Right, Renee Zellweger, who I am not alone, kind of had a thing for her since Jerry Maguire, is playing Judy Garland. Apparently she's quite good in it. People are quite keen on her performance. It takes 2 pages to talk about how great Judy Garland and Renee Zellweger are, which is, one would think, 2 well-known quantity. Tones and I has been taken up by the Telegraph as an Aussie success story. She does seem kind of cool, kind of interesting. Music's alright. Duncan Lay's writing a confused piece about Kim Kardashian and Greta Thunberg. It seems his hatred of Kim Kardashian, it's not the most controversial view Duncan's ever had, makes him see the plus sides of Greta. This is when tabloid newspapers get very confused, isn't it? Oh God, James Corden's bringing his Late Late Show to Australia. Well, that's the kind of fat white male mediocrity that the Sunday Telegraph can really get behind. Annette Sharp is covering the intriguing rise of Jake Thrupp, who is Alan Jones's 22-year-old protege, who writes about himself as the 4th most influential person in Australia, possibly on the basis that he influences Alan, and Alan is number 3. Jake has a lot to learn about real money and power when he's not under Alan's protection, I suspect. Look, if he gets to tour the world in Alan's company and have a lovely time, then that's great. So James Weir is upset that the only person with a regular job on The Bachelor, who is Noosa City Councillor Jess Glasgow, has had his career and reputation destroyed by coming across as a truly vile human being. I'm not quite sure what the complaint is here. I'm not quite sure I'd call a city councillor a regular job either. some would consider it to be quite elite. Okay, we are done. That is an absolute cracker of a terrible paper. Look, I think it's possible to be a volunteer fiery and an Extinction Rebellion protester. Just don't tell Peter Credlin because the head will explode. And while I wouldn't mind the explosion, I wouldn't wish having to clean up that mess on anyone. Thank you for watching all the way through. Do please like, share, subscribe, and all the rest of those things, because it's only through your love and attention that it's worth doing this. So, you know, if you like it, and I assume everyone who's made it this far does, let's keep it going. Okay, folks, we'll see you next week.